From Red Zone Weather in Bruton, Alabama, with meteorologist Spinks Meganson. A tropical weather update starts right now.
Hurricane Ian becoming stronger on this Monday evening. Ian set to move toward the Florida Peninsula over the next few days. It's likely to become a Category 4 major hurricane on approach to the Florida Peninsula later this week. Good Monday evening to you. I'm meteorologist Spinks Meganson. A serious situation setting up for our friends in the Florida Peninsula, specifically near the Tampa Bay area later this week as Hurricane Ian approaches from the southwest. Right now, Ian is growing stronger in the Caribbean Sea. Look at this satellite presentation. Overall, the structure of this hurricane has substantially come together today, and you can see this now looks like a robust hurricane that is. Right now, maximum sustained winds in excess of 100 miles per hour as the core of this continues to grow stronger, and Ian is explicitly forecast to become a major hurricane over the next several hours. We've got a deep dive into the data on this Monday evening. First thing we need to look at is the cone of uncertainty, because this has shifted a bit today. And for our local area in South Alabama and Northwest Florida, it's a good thing. Unfortunately, for our neighbors to the southeast in the Florida Peninsula, it continues to be bad news. So the cone starts, of course, where Hurricane Ian is now in the western Caribbean Sea. Right now, at the center of powerful Hurricane Ian is located south of the western tip of Cuba. In fact, looking at the latest information from the Hurricane Center, the center is about 155 miles to the south of the western tip of Cuba. There's the wind fields right now anyway, and you can see that the tropical storm force winds have expanded today, and overall Ian is set to become even larger over the next few days. So let's kind of measure this so we can see what we're talking about tonight, so we can start comparing this. And we'll put a probe out and see that tropical storm force winds already extend about 200 miles around. So in other words, about 100 miles out from the center of circulation on all sides. Hurricane force winds extending outward from the center point about 25 miles. In other words, about a 50-mile circle around the center of circulation. You find those hurricane force winds already in excess of 74 miles per hour. And Ian is set to grow even larger. That's because the storm is moving over very favorable sea surface temperatures, up around 86, 87 degrees. That's how warm the waters are in the western Caribbean Sea and the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. And the National Hurricane Center does ramp Ian up explicitly to a Cat 4 hurricane with winds likely to be in excess of 135 miles per hour tomorrow. Once the center of the storm crosses out here into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, not only does Ian have high sea surface temperatures to work with, the upper level environment is favorable for intensification in this area as well before Ian reaches the central and northern Gulf, where the upper level environment will be less supportive for intensification. But it may not matter too much, unfortunately, for our friends along the western coast of Florida near Tampa, St. Petersburg, areas near Hudson, back over to Cape Coral, Fort Myers. A big time, significant storm surge set to occur in those areas. If you get an evacuation notice, please heed those warnings. If you, your family member, I should say, or a friend, if you know somebody down this way, tell them if they get an evacuation order, they must get out, as we do have a hurricane warning now in effect for the Tampa Bay area, areas near Sarasota. Also areas out here in Pinellas County and St. Pete involved in the hurricane warning. We also have a tropical storm warning south of Naples going down to the Keys. And again, I'm particularly concerned this evening about the Tampa Bay area. The surge, regardless of the storm, if it's weakening here on approach, this is going to be a surge like this area has not seen in many years. Very concerned about the storm surge on the eastern side of this hurricane as it goes into the Florida Peninsula most likely later this week. And keep in mind, again, that cone of uncertainty has shifted a bit back to the east on this Monday. The cone basically extends from Apalachicola on the west back down to Cape Coral on the south. And right now, the most probable landfall point for this large hurricane is going to be somewhere near the Tampa Bay area. Let's look at one model, and most of the models have really come into agreement over the last 24 hours. This is the GFS, the Global Forecast System, and this pretty much lines up perfectly with what we're seeing on the cone of uncertainty. In other words, that finished product that we've been talking about. The models are one ingredient, but at this point, most of the ingredients are very similar to what we're seeing on the finalized product. Here's your timestamp right up here. This is valid at 1 a.m. on Wednesday. This would be a Cat 4 Hurricane Ian bringing relentless waves to parts of South Florida, areas near the Everglades, Fort Myers, the Keys. You also would have hurricane force winds near the coast, tropical storm force winds farther inland here. This is valid at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. The storm surge near Tampa Bay and Sarasota could be particularly intense. There's also Englewood and Cape Coral involved in this as well. This could be the eye wall, a very potent eye wall, I should mention, of Ian as it comes ashore very slowly. In other words, this hurricane is going to slow down once it reaches this general area, and that's bad news, a potentially significant, extensive situation setting up for areas near Tampa Bay with that storm surge and high wind pelting the same areas over many hours. And look, the thing just kind of moves there, and it pretty much just stalls out for a bit very near the Tampa Bay area. So again, concern has increased for Tampa, St. Petersburg, Pinellas County, areas there in central Florida. For our area, we're okay, all right? South Alabama and northwest Florida, very little to no impact for land areas. Now, don't get me wrong, there will be rip currents and high waves and coastal hazards at the beach zones, but most of the models show the rain shield remaining to our east. I wouldn't be shocked if we got some showers and thunderstorms in here, particularly on late Thursday into Friday, but overall, it looks like our area continues to have trends that support the system remaining to our east. And again, we would be on that better west side. Air would be going around this counterclockwise circulation. That look, by the way, is valid on Friday at 7 o'clock. Most of the high school football games across our area at that point would be dry with much cooler air in place, probably going to have game time temperatures in the 60s or maybe even low 70s across the region on Friday night. And by the way, the center of Ian would be inland over at the Big Bend region of Florida by the time we get to Friday evening, most of the rain to our east. In terms of other hazards, storm surge, high winds for parts of central Florida and the Florida Keys. Rainfall going to be a major concern. It is very rare on this map, on the quantitative precipitation forecast, to see a zone where we could have upwards of 20, yes, 20 inches of rain. Now that's offshore, but the reason I'm showing this is because it's not going to take much to get that right near Tampa Bay and areas near Englewood, back up to areas there near Longboat Key. You've also got areas near Sarasota. So again, small scale features are going to make all the difference in the world here. And so you could have 7-8 inches of rain. That's what's officially forecast for Tampa at this point. But you go just a few miles, I mean just a few miles offshore, and you could have upwards of 20 inches of rain. And again, with the variability here, that could end up over west central Florida. Very concerned for those areas as this very powerful hurricane approaches from the southwest. So in addition to the rain, the high wind, the storm surge, of course, this area also will be dealing with tornadoes. The Storm Prediction Center, valid for tomorrow, has a level 2 out of 5 tornado risk in place for Tampa, St. Petersburg, back down to the Florida Keys, and Fort Myers, Cape Coral, also areas there near Punta Gorda involved in a level 2 out of 5 tornado risk. You note that the Miami Metro, Fort Lauderdale, areas back up to the Space Coast, and Orlando involved in the lower end level 1 out of 5 tornado risk for tomorrow. No tornado risk anywhere close by in South Alabama or Northwest Florida. We are okay at this point. In fact, speaking of local impacts, let's talk about what we can expect locally. Beach hazards, rip currents, high waves. I'm going to be blunt. Don't be a bonehead and get out in the water. Even though this thing is going to be situated well to our southeast most likely in terms of those core impacts, we are going to have high waves and rip currents. Red flags will be flying, double red flags in some cases. If you're headed to the Gulf, that's fine, but you won't be able to get in the water if those double red flags are flying. And please just stay out of the water. All right, again, don't be a bonehead. We don't like the folks who get out in the middle of these big, wave situations and create headaches for the first responders. They need to be able to, be free to do their job, and we can't do that if we've got boneheads getting in the water. Also, going to have gusty winds across the region, upwards of 20 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts. And keep in mind, this is not exactly due to Ian. That's part of the influence here. We actually have a frontal boundary coming in that's going to usher in pressure gradient winds around Ian and the frontal boundary. And so it's going to be pretty breezy in here as we get into Wednesday, Thursday, and on Friday. I should mention as well, we are watching a system way out in the middle of the Atlantic. This system now has a 70% chance of becoming a named tropical storm. Next name is Julia, and it does look like that system may develop over the next few days. No threat to land, probably will never be a threat to land. That's something we'll keep our eyes on. By the way, cooler air coming in tonight and tomorrow night, overnight lows set to be in the 50s and 60s. And a bit of housekeeping here, last but not least, the Storm Prediction Center has introduced a pretty uncommon elevated wildfire risk for our area tomorrow. And this is a situation where we could have gusty winds and dry conditions really favoring prescribed burns getting out of control. So if you have a prescribed burn planned for tomorrow, just keep this in mind and know that it may not be the best day to do burning around here. An elevated wildfire risk set for Tuesday. By the way, here's the next 7 days. Rain chances lower later this week, not zero, but lower. Look at these high temperatures, going to be in the 70s as we get into Thursday and Friday, overnight lows in the 50s and 60s. And at this point, we can say that the impacts from Hurricane Ian will most likely affect areas to our east and not directly affect South Alabama or Northwest Florida. Big forecast changes at this point are unlikely. It does look like we could have significant impacts here in central Florida, specifically near Tampa and St. Petersburg, near Tampa Bay. Hurricane Ian continuing to gain strength on this Monday evening, pushing to the northwest, going to make more of a turn to the north overnight. As it does so, likely to strengthen into a Category 4 hurricane tomorrow in the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. A hurricane warning is in effect for the west central Gulf Coast of Florida near Tampa. We also have a tropical storm watch that continues for the Big Bend region, basically from the Suwannee River all the way back over to Indian Pass. And so Indian Pass, Apalachicola, Carabel could have tropical storm force winds as we get into Thursday and Friday on the outer edge of Ian. But for now, no major issues expected in South Alabama or Northwest Florida. Many people have asked me today, could we get a big shift in the cone of uncertainty back to the west? That is increasingly unlikely. So breathe a little easier. We're not going to say those two magic words, all clear, just yet until the thing comes on shore. But I'm very encouraged by the trends. I'm going to sleep better tonight, and you are too. Unfortunately for our friends to the southeast down in Florida, they will not be sleeping well. They'll be getting ready for this storm, hopefully, as this could be a very significant situation for parts of west central Florida and really the entire Florida peninsula over the next few days. High winds, storm surge, very heavy rain, flash flooding, and tornadoes all going to be concern, as this powerful hurricane continues moving to the north. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. I'll try to get to those in just a little bit. I do hope you have a good Monday evening. Next forecast video coming in the morning by 7:15 a.m. Many more updates coming in the overnight hours in the Red Zone Weather app. I hope you have a wonderful Monday evening.
Be sure to find us across social media, and don't forget to download the free Red Zone Weather app and set up your customized alerts. Please support our Red Zone Weather sponsors who make our coverage possible every single day.